Oh, we are now live. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Pause Reviews podcast, the live show. Back this week with the live show. As I've said, we're doing this every other week with podcast episodes in the in-between weeks. And we are waiting for Tim to join us. We had a bunch of technical difficulties, and I got all kinds of comments about how rough the intro to last 2 weeks ago live episode was. So we'll see if we can iron that out this week. So if you have seen, what's up, Joe? What's up, Tom? Thanks for coming back this week. If you guys saw our post from earlier, we got a lot to cover today. As soon as Tim gets on here, we're going to jump right in. Lots of listener requests and questions and all kinds of stuff. So it's a bit of a mix today, a very eclectic mix of topics this week. We'll be starting off with Luca. We'll be talking about Don't Breathe, the first one, not the second one. I think there was a little bit of confusion there. And then listener requests for the movie Crooked House on Netflix, and listener request for Knives Out. And those paired interestingly together. So I think that will be a fun conversation. Let's see, what else? Oh, big decisions that we've been kind of talking about, again, as we continue to wait for Tim. And I'm going to keep saying it so that when he watches this back, he can know that his lateness did not go unnoticed. And I find it, hugely unprofessional, especially for what we pay him, which, of course, is zero. But, big news and decisions being made on how we're going to move forward with our format and our structure. We've been kind of alluding to some changes. More than alluding, we've been outright saying that we're going to be making some changes. And so we're going to be making the shift to talking about films from the National Registry. And more details and information about what that is to come. And we've been kind of juggling with the idea, do we start that now? Do we wait a little bit? And what I came to realize was to really do it right, we're going to have to take a bit of a break and iron out the format. And I want to, invest in time and probably some money into making the product better and better suited for those types of conversations. And so we're so close. It didn't make sense to go on a break and then come back for like an episode or two and, to then finish up this season or, launching the new season and going on break again before that. So instead, we're going to do what makes the most sense. What's up, Tim?
What? That's way too high.
So I'm just finishing up, wrapping everybody up on some of the news here.
Yeah, I heard all that.
Yeah, your camera is super high, by the way.
Let me
Yeah.
Let me move that.
Yeah, so instead we're going to do the obvious thing, which is to just ride this out for season 2. We're going to finish strong in the coming weeks, months. We'll go on our normal break starting, mid-December. And then we'll pick up with season 3 under the new format. So that makes the most sense. I'm a little bit ashamed as to how it took us that long to get to that realization.
Probably just as long as it's taking me to format or to get this thing set up so I can see things.
Yeah. Oh, there he is.
I'm just gonna hold it. Let's just go that way.
Nice. Now here comes the real challenge. The game is how long can Tim hold this before those forearms and thumbs start to burn?
That's a good point. I had a good setup last time, and now I don't remember what I did to hold things in place. So I'll have to figure that out again.
Yeah, we'll work it out. It's like me. When you watch stuff in bed and you're holding the phone or the iPad and the pinkies start going numb, and you're just kind of
I have a tendency, if I lay on my side to watch something, that my arm goes numb because I'm propped up like this or something like that. And yeah, no.
Oh, yeah. Well, do you wear the over ears in bed?
Not normally, no.
Right.
If I'm watching something in bed, we're watching it together. But yeah, I have a hard time laying down in bed to watch something. I need one of those things that those glasses or something, so I could lay down like that.
Listen, true story, and I've told my uncle, I was like, dude, I want this.
Yes,
So
Joe, that is so true.
he's the number two. Yo, the iPad is the worst.
Oh yeah,
Like you get hit in the lip with one of those bad boys,
I've
and
bled for sure.
oh, it's miserable. So in bed is where I do the bulk of my watching.
Right.
And Alyssa does not. We'll start watching something together. It's a countdown. Like as soon as it starts rolling, we're talking minutes before she's out.
Oh,
and
yeah,
then I can change it to whatever it is.
That's me. I'm usually the one that falls asleep, and then she says, "You're sleeping." I'm like, "No, I'm not."
Oh, dude, that's hilarious. No. So I usually stay up way past her and catch up on stuff or watch stuff. And but in bed I got to do I do the buds because I can't lay on, cans, you know what I mean?
It's too hard.
Yo, so what were we talking? Oh, my uncle. So my uncle watching stuff, he watches a lot of stuff in bed, and he can't hold the phone for too long, and but regardless, he made his own like headset deal out of foam core and tape or whatever, and it fits his phone, and he can put them on like glasses and just lay there and watch. My buddy Rico used to have a thing that attached to the back of his bed, and it was like a boom arm that held his iPad over top of him.
Nice.
So, yeah. No, but Alyssa's a light sleeper. She if she can hear anything or the flashing lights, then she'll be up.
Yeah.
Dude, it is amazing, Joe. It is. I told Esty. I was like, dude, you need to make me one.
Right.
And I don't know. I'm still waiting for that. All right, man. How are you guys doing? How are you holding up, Tim?
We're okay. Carissa has been sick 2 days this week, and then it hit me last night. I don't know if it came from the baby. Some people were sick at her work. It's not COVID. She got tested. Her coworkers got tested. So I feel safe enough that I don't need to get tested because if she was negative, I'm sure it's negative and it's the same thing. So I'm down a little bit today. I'm feeling okay though. Now I took an afternoon nap, so I didn't finish the one movie we're talking about. So that's why I was a little delayed. I was trying to finish it and wasn't going to get there. So I had to Frank catch me up a little bit on the end of it.
Give him the Cliff Notes, which the end is the only part I wanted you to watch.
I should have skipped to the end.
You could have skipped everything else.
It was just a bad combination of it got kind of gray and rainy this afternoon, and I don't feel great.
Fact.
And I was like, I need to fall asleep. And I thought about just putting it on, and then I was like, nah. So was desperately trying to get through the end of it, but I failed on that account. But no, I mean, we're good other than the stress of that. I'm hoping it came from the baby, so we don't end up giving it to the baby. But we'll see. It's fine. It's to be expected, cool, as long as it's not COVID.
That's it. As long as it's not COVID. Well, should we just jump in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. So this episode, I was saying, is primarily listener requests. Much of it came from my wife, which is, for someone who doesn't even listen to the episode, she has a lot to say about what we should be talking about.
And then she got mad at us when we said we were going to do her first one because she had changed her mind and wanted us to talk more about a second one. So,
yes, that's right. Because I told her, I said, hey, we're going to do your Luca thing. She goes, I want you to do Crooked House. I said, well, we're going to do both. Yes. And again, she won't listen to any of it, so it doesn't really matter. We say whatever we want.
Yep.
She'll never know you didn't actually watch it, Tim.
That's 100% true.
All right, so let's kick off with Luca. So Luca from Disney Pixar came out this year, and this one, it's been out a while, obviously. The main reason this got requested is, and I've heard this actually from a few people.
Yeah.
But Alyssa was really struggling with, what the heck is this movie about?
Yeah.
And I think knowing your, intense fandom of all things Disney was like, please answer this question for me.
Yeah.
So let's do a really brief rundown of what Luca is, what we thought watching it, and then answer the question to see, can we make sense of the point or the what is this movie's mission?
Right.
Right? So Luca, as I said, from this year, Disney Pixar, and it's the story of a kid named Luca who befriends another kid named Alberto.
I mean,
Alberto?
you're glossing over the fact that they're not kids at all.
Fact, sea monsters. And so they're sea monsters living off the coast of some Italian town, port, island, I don't know. But it's an Italian-based movie. That I don't know. I found it. I'm not Italian, but I was like, is this offensive?
It does strike me odd that the only people with really heavy Italian accents for a good portion of it is like the villain, right? Like the villain.
Well, he's actually an Italian actor.
Yeah, I mean, but
right, he's the only actual Italian.
Yeah,
in the movie.
like the when they befriend that little girl, like her dad has an accent, but like
right.
really the only person with a heavy Italian accent or caricature is the villain.
Right, like, but they also, but like the kids, so much of the inflection of everything they say, they do that weird thing. It drives me crazy, right? So I am a native Spanish speaker, right? And I say Chipotle, and I say, right, because when you're speaking in English, it sounds weird to just have these random accented English words for Spanish words.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this movie is just full of voice actors just putting that like stereotypical like, hey, it's a mozzarella, right? And like everything is named something, right? Like the cat is Gorgonzola or, or Machiavelli.
Well,
or,
and what's now I'm forgetting the little girl's name, but everything she says, Santa de mozzarella, Santa de gorgonzola.
Right. And then as a former Catholic, you're kind of like, this is not only borderline offensive, but it's also heresy. Like this is
right.
No, but anyways, we're just messing around. But the movie Sea Monsters, when they come up to the surface, turn human, right? And
as they do.
As you do.
That's why we can't find the Loch Ness monster.
Right. Stop it, Tim, because I feel like part of you means that. And so this boy Luca is a son to very oppressive sea monster parents. He herds fish and is always kind of curious about the surface. He gets forced to the surface to make the change, and then befriends this guy Alberto, who is a abandoned sea monster child who lives on this island on the surface, and they get this plan together to build or get a Vespa to run away from home and travel the world, because Luca's parents, to keep him from the surface, are going to send him to the depths of the ocean with his uncle Luca, who is voiced by Sacha Baron Cohen. And I'm curious to know, because I noticed, as with most Pixar movies, right, at the end, if you watch the credits, they give you, the little pictures of what has happened to them since the movie ended.
Yeah.
So I'm watching that to kind of get a sense, because we've got some questions.
Yep.
And then the other bit was, but if you ride it all the way out, you get a Marvel-style post-credit scene.
Oh.
Did you see it?
No, I didn't.
And it's Luca back in the depths with a random fish, and it's amazing. So, anyways, they go up to the surface. They befriend this girl, Julia, a human girl.
Yeah.
And they're going to race in the Ponderosa Cup, which is this, they call it the Italian triathlon.
Right.
Because it is biking, swimming, and pasta eating instead of running. And so they run this race to win the money, to buy the Vespa, to earn their freedom. All while hiding the fact that they are sea monsters in this town of Ponderosa that hunts sea monsters.
It's a fishing town.
Right. But there's a lot of they're alluding to the fact that they are sea monster hunters.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Quick, 30 seconds or less, your thoughts on the movie.
So I definitely I'm not going to bury the lead on this. I think this is where we're starting to see Disney Plus. Like, this would have been direct to video, right? Without Disney Plus.
Yeah.
This isn't a
Right.
Pixar A list. I don't feel. It's sort of, I guess, like Raya and the Last Dragon went right to Disney. It was, it had a lot of merch and stuff, but it was like they advertised it for a bit and then it's gone. And
correct me if I'm wrong, I don't really remember Luca being. I know, like, McDonald's, because if we got the kids a Happy Meal, they were like Luca toys for a little while.
Yep.
But I felt like Luca was always going straight to Disney Plus, whereas Raya did the premiere access release. Like,
yeah,
which led me to believe it was intended for a theatrical release, and that this one maybe wasn't.
Yeah, that could very well be. I know that there were, like, Disney's got like the display in Target now, and they have like the pseudo Disney store in Target now, and there was definitely merch. But yeah, it's definitely. I look at it in the pantheon of Pixar, and I think now for us, this is the second one where we're kind of like, because last year we talked about Onward, and Onward was kind of a mess too. And I wouldn't necessarily say that this is a mess, but it's got some big problems. I mean, as with most Pixar movies, they're pretty to look at. It's very well animated. There's a lot of nice colors, set in this Italian beach town, and the sea monsters are very extravagant. But story-wise, there's just no motivation, in the early parts to get Luca above ground. We don't really see him fantasize about being above ground the way that the way that, like, Ariel does, or something about that. And the fact that Alberto kind of forces him above water, like forcibly drags him out of the ground, and he's like, no, but I'm a good kid. Like, it felt kind of assaulty.
I don't want to cut you off, but
yeah.
Joe just brought up the notion of, in the chat here, that the film has been celebrated for its underlying queer themes, right?
Right.
And we spoke a lot about this because you absolutely noticed that.
Yeah.
Whether that was intentional or not, and again, to agree with Joe, not so much that the boys themselves are in love with one another, but that their story could, someone going through something like that, right? Being closeted and trying to find acceptance, or trying to find the courage to, kind of live their life, free. Yep. And so, would certainly find a foothold in this movie and in this story to relate to. I would argue exactly that scene you're talking about, that there is a moment that was really unsettling for me, which is when Luca is brought to the surface by Alberto. He is forced to the surface, and when he changes, he's kirking out, and Alberto says, "Oh, is this your first time?" And Luca says, "Of course it is. I'm a good boy."
Yeah.
And I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
And because, again, it's hard to, that underlying theme, it's there, right?
Yeah,
and whether it's intentional or not, I gotta believe it is. That moment felt disturbing, right? To be forcibly taken out of that and right? Now, I think the rest of the movie does an okay job. I think, and again, and maybe this doesn't address that theme, but my question to you is, what felt lacking for me was that motivation to get out of the water, right? And what is the reason that we're so fearful? Beyond the general notion of we fear the unknown. Like, the mother is so aggressively anti the human world, but like with Finding Nemo, the dad is super oppressive because his wife was killed by humans.
The only thing we see is, like, a boat goes overhead and he's like, "Oh, we gotta hide," and we don't really know why. Like, the town maybe hunts sea monsters in conjunction with their fishing trade, but, like, no one's ever really necessarily seen a sea monster for sure.
Right, no evidence that they've actively caught sea monsters.
Yeah,
in the past.
and so that whole idea of like we have to hide from them, and the mom's like, well, we see more boats now. It's like, okay, you see more boats, but their grandma admits that she has done the change and come back, and we find out
she goes every weekend.
Yeah, in the end, we find out she goes every weekend. So there's not that like inherent danger. Add in with Finding Nemo, there's an ocean at large of things that could kill a clownfish. It seems like these sea monsters are pretty much in control of their kingdom, right? They're not really worried about anything else. They seem to have good control over fish.
Right.
Add into that, there's a little bit discussed at like, Luca and his grandma share a room, and like maybe she has told him a little bit, but it's not like, he's sitting there and she's telling him stories every night and he's daydreaming about going to the surface. He seems fairly uninterested until he sort of finds these pieces that that are dropped from a boat. But
he has one line.
Yeah,
right? He has one line when he's hurting the fish where he seems frustrated by his boring life in the ocean, where he's just kind of like, one of the fish runs away and he's talking to the other one and he's like, do you want to end up like your friend who's dead or seeing the world? Right. But even then he's hesitant to go to the surface. Joe brought this up. This was going to be my next point as well. Joe's on point tonight, by the way. Fire, Joe. You're on fire. So The Little Mermaid is another comparison, right? So we talked about how in Finding Nemo, the parental fear is made clear as to why. Here we don't know, right? Did the mother have a relative who was killed by someone in this town? Did, whatever the situation is. And then in Little Mermaid, right, Ariel is curious about the surface, but when she sees Prince Eric, she falls instantly in love and will stop at nothing to be with him. And that is her motivation. Luca wants to go to the surface, but then is forced to the surface and then stays there almost against his will. And
I would argue that he doesn't even really want to spend a lot of time up there until his parents threaten to send him to the deep, right? Like
that's exactly right.
He's spending time up there. He's, they build the Vespa, their little push cart, and it's not until his
Santa
parents,
Coffee, push cart champion.
It's not until his parents really give him the motivation to stay up there does he ever not consider going back home. It's a fun thing to do during the day, but he's always returned home until they're like, we're going to send you so far you can't come back. So
I think the last criticism that I want to bring out for us to discuss briefly before we get into the positives and then move on, because it seems like we could talk about this movie for a whole episode. One of my other big criticisms then, once they're up there, this whole notion of the Vespa, right? And these overdone like fantasy scenes of him flying through the air on Vespas and all this other kind of stuff, it all just felt weak. As in like the writing just wasn't quite there. So the writing team for this is Enrico Casarosa, who is also the director, who is an Italian director, writer now. These were his first. He did a short film before this called La Luna, and then this movie, written and directed. Before that, he's an artist. He was in the art department for Disney and worked on several films, and then he was in the animation department. He's worked on films like Coco and Incredibles 2. So he is, a strong Disney alum, but from the artistic side, not the directorial or the writing side of things. So, and along with, there were two other writers credited, Jesse Andrews and Simon Stevenson, also their first major writing credit. So this movie feels lacking in many places because it felt like an amateur job. This wasn't the A team. And that certainly comes through. But to your point, some of the positives, I thought the approach to the artwork, it was beautiful. It was gorgeous colors. It was a unique style, a unique artistic style we hadn't really seen before, kind of like It reminded me of the drawings from, like Diary of a Wimpy Kid or something like that. You know?
I would say it's a little different for Disney Pixar. I'm not sure if you dropped me into the middle of it, I would necessarily, you know what I mean? Like it felt a little different. There was some difference to it,
and there was a feeling of hand drawn as opposed to a real, sort of effort to the photorealistic or anything like that.
Yeah.
That Pixar has really moved towards, which is like really impressive, digital graphics. These are obviously still that, but it had a raw feel to it. Not quite as, like Klaus, but certainly more so than other Pixar things we've seen.
Yeah.
And then also to get back to Joe's point with the underlying LGBTQ themes, there are some genuinely beautiful moments in this movie where, in heartbreaking moments when Luca turns on Alberto to kind of save himself and calls him out as a sea monster and leaves him high and dry, but then comes to his own acceptance and, reveals himself to save his friend and, those kinds of things. These are genuinely good moments.
Yeah.
That make watching it enjoyable, and it tugs on the strings that you would expect a Pixar movie to tug on, which are normally fantastically done in that regard.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is, it has some genuine laughs.
Yeah.
Like there are some funny moments. There are a lot of stereotypical moments, but it is, there are some definite points where I find myself, giving a chuckle.
Yeah.
And isn't that what we kind of look for in these?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was funny that the cat suspected them of being sea monsters. Like it sort of had noticed them change a little bit. And then the cat was always a little suspicious of them. And for some reason, Julia's dad takes the cat fishing with them. And, they have the scene in the boat. The cat ends up overboard, and of course, cats hate getting wet. There were some genuinely funny moments. I thought the uncle was absolutely hilarious, and he goes on
Luca,
this. Yeah. He's like, oh yeah, come with me, and we'll float in the dark, and you just get bits of whale carcass. You just float around with your mouth
open. The mouth, it falls in. It's nice. I recommend it. And his heart keeps stopping, and Luca has to punch it to get it going again.
There were definitely some fun moments.
One more fun moment with Luca is: did you catch the scene where the parents are looking for Luca, and there's that sea monster movie poster? He goes, "Luca," it's a legit moment.
Yeah, and. I also kind of like how his parents go above and they're dousing all of the kids in town with water, hoping to find Luca. But, because that's how they can tell. If they get wet in any way, their scales show up. So they're throwing water balloons and they're tossing kids in fountains. And nobody seems to care that these two adults are wandering around town abusing children. But, I think as you've sort of seen, your daughter watches this movie endlessly, and I think it's got
at least 6 times a day.
But I do sort of think an older kid, I think there are some things that need to be discussed. I do see the tones and the message there, and I know it's been sort of well received, and maybe I'm just being too sensitive. But the allegory of a monster, I get it, but that seems kind of off-putting to me that if you're intending for this to have that message, you're equating people with alternative lifestyles as monsters. I'm like, So I think there is a little parental guidance, I think, maybe involved at some point. Some things I think you and I, when we talked about it, talked in terms of Schitt's Creek and how that has been embraced by the communities and such, and they did such a good job handling it by almost their not handling of it, right, by not addressing it too hard. So I don't know. Again, I just think we're in the B realm, and this is direct to Disney Plus for a reason. I enjoyed it. It was a nice after evening watch with dinner. But not going to make my pantheon of Disney Pixar movies for sure.
Yeah, this is definitely one. It's a easy watch. It's an enjoyable watch. It's beautiful to watch. It has a lot of holes, plot holes, and maybe thematic ones, as you brought up, and concerns there for sure. I think too, there's a lot of questions, right? We spend the whole beginning forcibly trying to get us, the viewer, to accept that the human world is dangerous and he shouldn't be there, but then maybe it isn't, and maybe there is acceptance. And then he just rides off to school, and like it's all been, and it's just a throwaway line, like it's all been worked out. Well, what's been worked out, right? Does Julia's mom know that you're a sea monster? Do the people on the train know that you're a sea monster? What about the kids at school? Now, if you watch those post-credit scenes, or credit scenes, there are little images that sort of tell that narrative, right?
Yeah.
And so it seems like maybe yes, and that this town is a very isolated, old-fashioned type town. Even Julia makes a reference to that. Like, of all the places in Italy to come, you chose here, like where we're the least accepting.
I would also argue, though, that at the end of the day, if it's so much better to be a person, why does anybody stay a sea monster? It's pretty hard to stay dry.
Interesting.
It's easy to stay dry. Like, there's that reveal at the end where a couple of the other towns members, who everyone knows, have always been sea monsters. So.
And
why?
Interesting enough, the other towns members who were always sea monsters, two older women.
Yeah, right.
Who are living together and are always together, and so does that further that theme? Maybe.
Yeah. So.
So it's a cute movie. There's enough there that you can really dive in and break it down and get super analytical about. But when you do that, you're going to find a lot of plot holes. But I will say, I think the good overall outweighs the bad, and for what it is, it's an enjoyable watch. I don't mind it when it's on and my little girl is watching it. I agree with you. When Gabriel watches it, we got to have more conversations, because there's also a lot of elements there too. Like, these are disobedient kids, and then they're rewarded in the end, right? Yeah. So, he runs away from home, and the parents just sort of cave because he happened to win the race. Do I really want my 8-year-old being like, well, I don't have to listen to my parents. I'm right, and I'm going to teach them that I'm right.
Right.
That's not something I'm going to let fly, right? Yeah. So that causes me some concern. But for a little bit of mindless fun, and maybe for adults having those deeper conversations about what this movie might mean, and giving a vessel for people to relate to in that way, I think is beautiful. Yeah. And certainly worth the watch, but with some reservations. I agree. It's not top tier, which is also a shame too, because if we're going to have that theme, it'd be nice if it was done a bit better.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree
100%.
Anyway,
talking about holes, then that leads us to this the next thing that I don't think we'll spend a lot of time on.
That is a statement. It could have gone any number of ways.
That's true. This one just kind of popped up on my radar because I had seen the trailers for a sequel that's about to come out, and that's Don't Breathe. So Don't Breathe 2 is in theaters right now.
And available to rent, on Cinema at Home. Right.
And so I had said to you in passing, I was like, have you seen this trailer? And you're like, oh yeah, I've seen the first one. Like, I remember it being, okay to watch. Like, it was watchable. So, and you owned it too. So I was like, why not? I want to see what this is all about, because the trailer for the second one looks absolutely insane, right? There's this blind veteran who's just laying waste to people that have invaded his space. So, and you're like, that's pretty much the first one from what you remember.
Right.
So I threw it on.
I had remembered a major part. I had not remembered a major part, I should say.
Yeah.
Continue.
So, long story short, with this movie, you come into 3 characters that it's in Detroit, so they don't have the best of lives, best of home lives, and they're looking for a way out, right? And they run little robbery scams. Now I'm blanking on the kids' names, but the one kid, his dad works for a security company, and so he has the keys to all of these houses and all the codes, right?
That kid is Alex,
yes,
played
Alex.
by Dylan Minette.
His dad has access to all these homes, the security codes and everything. So They use the key, they disarm the system, free range of the house, steal everything but money, fence it, and then, to keep things intact, they put the alarm back on, and then they break a window, so nobody ever suspects that this is an inside job, essentially.
Right.
They get frustrated with the fact that nobody wants the stuff that they're fencing anymore, and they find out that they can make one last big score and skip town. One of the dad's clients is this retired vet who is blind, who lives alone in a abandoned neighborhood in Detroit, and he's got, rumor is, hundreds of thousands of dollars in a safe. So they're gonna break in while he's asleep. In, out, no big deal. And that's where everything goes awry. The guy wakes up. One of the three kids gets shot, and then they find themselves in a whole world of hurt. This guy has a woman trapped in a sex dungeon in his basement. This woman is the person who killed his daughter in a vehicular manslaughter incident, and now he is keeping her chained up for the purpose of her repaying him with a new child. And it is just bizarre and strange from there, and a movie where I felt like I have no idea who I'm rooting for.
That's the big question, right? So again, this is one from 2018 and currently available to rent or buy. It's written and directed by Fede Alvarez, who prior to this hadn't done a ton. He had one other major, he did the remake of Evil Dead.
Yeah. Yep.
He did that in 2013. Then he did this. He has written the sequel, but it doesn't look like he's directing the sequel. Because and he co-wrote this.
Also, Sam Raimi is a producer, I believe, on this movie too, if I remember.
Which makes perfect sense because they would have worked together on Evil Dead.
Yeah.
And so, again, actors. Jane Levy is one who you might recognize. I know she's on a pretty big show at the moment. I can't think of the name. She did a movie that my son loves that we might do on an episode one day. It's called Monster Trucks.
Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist.
That's it. Yep. Yeah. And then Stephen Lang plays the blind man, who you would recognize. That is the name of the character, the blind man. You'll recognize him from Avatar and a few other things.
Yep.
The movie itself, it's a very interesting premise in the vein of how Hush was an interesting twist on home invasion.
Yeah.
This sort of takes that to another place when you focus on the general story of these kids breaking in to steal this money and then him defending his home.
Yep.
Where the movie makes the weird choice is by also making Stephen Lang the villain as well,
right,
for imprisoning this girl and impregnating her, and he qualifies it by, saying he's never forced himself on her, that it's all artificially done.
Yeah, because
but he's forcing that on her.
A turkey baster into someone's privates is not forcing yourself.
So there is, right, it struggles to make that. It doesn't struggle. It fails at making his character, feel like the victim. And in the end, you find yourself, who am I rooting for?
Yeah, there was just
idiot
not
kids
enough
breaking in.
Right. There's just not enough movie if they don't add that piece in there, right? And that's sort of where I was getting stuck. I was like, all right, so he woke up pretty easily. Why are they, maybe they had no choice but to break in while he's, there in his sleep. They didn't do that. That wasn't their MO for any other, robbery. But, you're halfway into this movie, and I'm like, it's pretty much over at this point. These kids just got to get out of the house, and we do kind of go all Silence of the Lambs a little bit at the end. At this point where they're in the basement, he shuts off the power and they're kind of blind. Everybody's blind, right? Or on equal playing field at this point because no one can see. And that's when they stumble across this girl. But without that, the movie's over halfway through. But with it, I wished it was halfway through, over halfway through, because it went weird and off the rails.
Yeah. The sequel is interesting. If you watch the trailers, it really bills him out to be a good guy. Like, all is forgotten or forgiven or was never known. Or
yeah. Well, and that's sort of one of the holes that really bothers me, right? The girl, Rocky, survives. Her two male accomplices, Alex and the other, and her boyfriend,
Money,
yeah. They both die in the course of this. She escapes multiple times, and then once for good with the money. He lets her kind of have the money. And she takes off. She gets her, is it her daughter or her sister? I think it was her. She had the
sister,
young girl,
I think.
Sister, I think.
Yeah.
They moved to California with that money. But she sees a newscast that's like, oh, the alarm went off, the police got there, and the police just find the blind man with the two dead bodies, and it's a home invasion, and he's innocent. They're just ignoring the fact that he has a sex dungeon in his basement. They're not going to question anything about that, there's instruments and frozen semen and, clearly a room where someone was kept, all's well that ends well. I had a hard time with that, among some other things that were just weird and inconvenient that aren't really explained. I mean, at one point, the blind man figures out there's other people in the house because he can smell their shoes. He's like, oh, something stinks, and he finds their shoes.
Well, he smells the shoes, and then he finds the guy's shoes, and then feels the second pair, and it's like, what? But yeah.
Okay, gross. It was, I don't know.
No. I do agree. There's a lot of plot holes there, a lot of things to get through. The kid, Alex, is super annoying.
Yeah.
We've gotten burned with this before. Also, sorry, real quick shout out to my boy Ashton, who just joined a bit ago. Thanks, man. It's good to see you. It's been a while. Ashton and I went to college together.
Nice.
Undergrad together. Yeah. Good dude. We played flag football. So back to the movie. The kid does one of those things. He's not only the inside guy, but he's, like a criminology expert. And he keeps saying these things. Oh, do you know what? You brought a gun? Now that adds 10 years. Now it's this. Now it's that. And he kept saying this whole notion of less than 10 grand, which is insane to me, right? Like, grand larceny is anything over like $200.
Yeah, right.
If you steal like the wrong lipstick from Victoria's Secret, it's a felony.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I don't know where this 10 grand number comes from, but again, whatever. In the grand scheme of things, it is what it is. And yet it doesn't matter that they're stealing, like $1 million at this point. So that goes out the window. I found him to be pretty annoying. But I guess where I would land with this one is I think Hush is a better movie and does a similar trope.
Yep.
I think, if you're just looking for something out there, it's watchable, but there are some cringeworthy moments that are cringeworthy for the wrong reasons, which would give me some real pause. And it's funny, when you mentioned that, I was like, I don't remember that at all. What stood out to me was the home invasion bit.
Right.
And that's why I was like, oh, it's definitely worth a watch. I own it. I'd only seen it the once. And when I rewatched it, I was like, oh, God.
Right.
So yeah, man, that's where I would fall on this one. I would probably not watch the sequel, only just because I don't really care to try to see the blind man as a good guy.
No.
And I'm just sort of, I'm all right. I'm all right.
Yeah.
I would not pay to watch this movie.
No.
If it was on HBO or something and you're curious, sure. Sure.
Yeah.
But,
no, that's a good bet, Joe. It's you'll need multiple showers afterwards.
It's troubling. It's troubling. All right, so we're running long. Which is totally fine. We had a lot to talk about.
We do.
But I do want to touch on these last two listener requests of Crooked House and Knives Out. And so Crooked House.
And this goes really hand in hand. So I think this is.
I think we can talk about these together. Yep. Yeah, for sure. They're practically the same movie, but one is far better than the other.
This is true.
Tim will have to take my word for it since he didn't do his homework. Shame this man.
I did half of the assignment.
Have credit. All right, so Crooked House was a request again from my wife Alyssa. It's on Netflix. It's a film adaptation of an Agatha Christie story.
Yep.
And the biggest name in that one is Glenn Close, but there are a few other actors, character actors, especially if you watch a lot of British stuff, who you might recognize. And then Knives Out was.
You're not giving Gillian Anderson enough credit.
I'm not giving what enough credit?
Gillian Anderson.
Gillian Anderson. I totally slept on that. 100%. 100%. And what's her face? Christina Hendricks is in it.
Yep.
And so yeah, there's some names. You're right. That's my bad. I'm still gonna hold fast that Glenn Close is the biggest name.
Yes, I would agree. Yep.
This one written by Julian Fellows. So the creator of Downton Abbey, Gosford Park, and a few other big things. So he's the lead writer on this one. Mm-hmm. And we're going to compare it a bit and speak to it kind of in tandem with Knives Out, written and directed by Rian Johnson. And that was a request from our good friend, Steve.
Yep.
And this one has been on our list for a while.
Yes.
And it just kind of kept getting pushed for a variety of reasons.
Yep.
Let's see. These two movies, as I said, almost identical, right? Patriarch is dead. Money grubby family is in the massive house.
Yep.
And they're all being held there by a private detective who is trying to make sense of the case and what has happened.
Right.
That is the premise for both of these movies.
Yes.
One of them done very well.
Yep.
And one of them done,
British.
like a low budget BBC made for TV movie.
Yes. Yes.
With an insane ending.
Yeah, which is the part that I didn't get to.
Oh my God. Go ahead, man. What were your thoughts on these?
My hot take is that, like you said, Knives Out was on our list for quite some time. We watched it a while ago and then we just never got around to it. But it's a fantastic movie. It is so much fun. It is not a movie that you have seen before. It shows you all of its cards right up front. And you spend the rest of the movie going, why am I watching more movie? But in a good way, right? It's not in a bad way. It's I've seen all this. What is there to figure out? And it really throws you off that there's anything more worth watching. But the whole movie is worth watching. There's great characters. Daniel Craig is fantastic. I love the character that he plays. The other cast in this also plays their characters really well. Michael Shannon,
Jamie Lee Curtis,
like everybody.
Don Johnson.
Yeah, everybody's slightly.
Chris Evans.
Yep, everybody's slightly eccentric, but not in a necessarily annoying way, right? Like they're all interesting characters. I enjoy everybody when they're on screen. There's some funny moments. There's some really funny characters. And it has some good heart to it. This character of Marta that you follow through, you're rooting for her the whole time, despite what is happening. And then in the end, you're really surprised about the journey that you've taken, and it's thoroughly enjoyable. And I really don't want to go into more detail than that. But as for Crooked House, what I've gotten through so far, I spent the whole time just wishing I was watching Knives Out again. Because even on a second watch, again, knowing completely this time what that movie is about, it's still so much fun to watch. The details that you missed, the pieces that you missed, the aha moments where things get put together. And while I didn't get to that in Crooked House, there wasn't anything drawing me in to continue. I just was like, this isn't, Knives Out did this better.
Yeah, so I agree 100% with everything you just said. And having actually seen both films, I feel like I'm the authority there, right?
I agree.
So
I'll
wife
shut up now and let you handle the rest of
it. So my wife genuinely loved Crooked House, and I think she also really liked Knives Out. My take on Knives Out I'm with you 100%. I remember my first time watching it. They tell you exactly what happened, almost exactly what happened in the first 15 minutes of the movie.
Yep.
And I remember in a 2-hour plus movie being like, what am I going to watch? And being riveted for the entirety of the movie,
Yeah.
even though I knew exactly what had happened.
Yep.
And that was the thing that I couldn't shake, in the years since it's come out.
Yeah.
And, on the second watch and the rewatchability of it, absolutely. Because even then, and given that these are both whodunits, I'm with you 100%. I think these are ones that we shouldn't necessarily spoil, even though I feel like most people have seen them. But in terms of rewatchability, again, even though I knew not only the setup, but I knew exactly what happens, right, in the end, and still I was fully sucked in. To be able to watch a whodunit more than once is a real testament to the movie. Clue is another one that is like that because it's so funny and ridiculous and enjoyable and well done that I watch that movie all the time. Yeah. And this one even more so because there are so many subtleties, little clues, little moments. And this is an example of when an all-star ensemble cast actually works. Yeah. Right? We've seen so many movies where they just bring in these heavy-hitting names, but they just don't mesh. They don't work together, and it ends up falling apart. Like, how many times have we said, even though it has a all-star cast of characters, it sucks or it's not enjoyable. And this is not that. Jamie Lee Curtis, she is perfection. Yeah. Don Johnson, who is not an A-list guy, right? Perfection. Yep. Michael Shannon
is great.
Great as always. Yep. And you mentioned Marta, Ana de Armas. She is amazing in this. So charismatic and lovable, and you root for her from jump. Yeah. Even when things are looking sketchy and going back and forth. And as you said, Daniel Craig as Mr. Blanc is amazing.
His Kentucky Fried Leghorn drawl.
And Chris Evans in this, coming off Captain America, it's so refreshing to see him just take on this totally different character. Yep. It's fantastic. It is a fantastic movie. My only criticism of this, and Christopher Plummer, as the patriarch, is so good. Yeah. I can't say enough about the writing, the direction. The cinematography is amazing. The set design is incredible. Yeah. That knife set and just the spaces in the house, how the dark plays, with the light and all this. Like, it's a very sumptuous movie.
Yeah, and there's a stylistic nature to it that makes it a little strange, but not off-putting, right? It's intriguing more than it is anything else. And, there are parts...
It kind of has a little bit of Kubrick to it, like with The Shining, where the layout of the house, the corners, the trap stuff, it feels off-putting. You're never comfortable. You don't really understand where everything lies, where they are at any given time, and it builds that tension, kind of like Kubrick did with the hotel, with the Overlook Hotel.
Yeah, very much.
He's riding his bike, and all of a sudden he's upstairs.
And very much like, I don't know that I'd actually want to live in this house, right?
Yes.
Like, if it was willed to me, I think I'm probably selling it. Like, it just... and that's... Yeah, it's... I don't know. I part of the things that I really liked about the house was, as the detectives are walking around with Blanc, every time they find something or they stumble across something, I'm like, oh, that's the thing from the novel that, Mr. Thrombey wrote, because he was a novelist, right? A murder mystery novelist. And so, like, oh, there's a secret door over there? That's from this novel. Oh, these statues are from the Statue Menagerie novel, right? And so, like, his estate was kind of a mystery in and of itself. And it was just, it was really kind of fun to go on that journey of them, wandering around looking for clues.
And he has a line, right? And we talk about the beginning setting up the end and whatever else, but he has this line where he's like, where people can't tell the difference between the real thing and the stage prop.
Yeah.
And then throughout the movie, so again, you don't know what's real, what's staged, what's true, what's not.
Yep.
But that does lead us, damn, it's such a good movie, but it leads us to the one thing I hate.
Yes.
And it's the only element that feels cheap and lazy and unbelievable and just stupid. And that is that Marta's character, Ana de Armas's character, anytime she lies, she vomits aggressively.
Yes.
And so we have a living, breathing, moving lie detector, and it is you understand the function that serves.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe just shared the puke emoji.
Yep.
And you get all that, but it just felt stupid. I feel like Rian Johnson has the ability to knock it out of the park, but he can never do it flawlessly. He always has to kind of crap on something. And that's the part that I hate of this movie. And
there's probably a more clever way to do that. What that is, I don't know. This movie is genuinely funny at parts, and I feel like it really does a good job at resisting some of the bathroom humor for a lot of other jokes where it's possible. And so that does kind of take it down a little bit, where you're like, you do such a good job of being clever and resisting that in other parts, but then you throw this out there so obviously that you could give her some sort of other tell. Maybe she has laughing fits or something like that. Is vomit that much funnier? To me, no. And I know some people who just straight up wouldn't watch this because they don't want to watch people throwing up. So, and
it's not that it happens all that much, but
right.
It's just stupid. And it really bothers me, and I can't shake it.
Yep.
But the good definitely outweighs the bad. This one's an absolute must watch, and it's on Amazon Prime. But as a comparison, Crooked House. I think the major failing for Crooked House, it feels low budget, it feels made for TV. It's got some decent actors, as we talked about, Gillian Anderson and Glenn Close. But it does the exact same thing. It's the exact same story.
Yep.
It's less compelling. It's less riveting. It's a little sloppier. It's a little, it's slower. It doesn't have the entertainment value,
right.
The production value.
Yep.
It's not as fun to watch. It's not as enjoyable to watch. It tells the same story. The saving grace for Crooked House is the end. The big twist at the end is insane. And what stuck with me was when I finished it, I told Alyssa had gone to sleep, and when she woke up, she goes, "Oh, did you finish the movie?" I said, "Yeah." She was like, "What did you think?" I was like, the only thing I could think about, I was like, the balls of this movie, right? I can't think of a major studio release that would necessarily have the guts to do what Crooked House does in the end.
To literally, what it sounds like, lull you to sleep and then literally drive you off the rails. As soon as you've nodded off, drive you off the rails is sort honestly, of where I feel like you've gone with that.
The whole time I'm watching Crooked House, I'm like, okay. If I had not seen Knives Out, I probably would have been a little bit more intrigued by the whodunit element.
Yeah.
It probably would have sucked me in a little bit more, and I would have forgiven a lot of the production lackings. But again, as you said, and I agree completely, as I'm watching Crooked House, I'm like, I just want to turn this off and watch Knives Out. But that end is insane. It's unlike anything I've seen, and it was so unexpected.
Yep.
And so crazy. I can't shake it. So I would say, arguably, it's worth watching for Glenn Close's British accent, which is flawless.
Yep.
And then, you suffer through a poor man's Knives Out to get to that end, and you're just like, What? What? Like, I can't. I'm dying. I'm dying to talk about it, but I can't. It's the one good part of the movie. I can't spoil it. But it is absolutely nuts. So Agatha Christie's Crooked House on Netflix. I mean, it's almost a shot for shot, of Knives Out. But my God, it's worth a watch just for that.
Yeah,
just for that.
And just sort of to put a bow on all that, Knives Out is getting a sequel and maybe multiple sequels.
Two.
So it will be really interesting to see where they go. I mean, I think we've gotten confirmation at this point it's not going to follow the same family. It's going to follow Benoit Blanc and his sort of story.
Daniel Craig will reprise the role in both Knives Out 2 and 3.
Yeah, so it'll be.
I think Rian Johnson will also be writing and directing both.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
And they both received like $100 million paydays for that Netflix deal. Yeah,
so it'll be interesting to see where that goes. We've talked at length before about ruining, not necessarily ruining a good thing, but I think we always come back to the John Wick trilogy. Is too much of a good thing at some point could dilute it. So it'll be interesting to see where we go.
This is, there's an established market, right? Like, I'm thinking of like what's his name? Not Perot, like the detective from Murder on the Orient Express.
Yeah,
he also had a BBC series. But this similar to a traditional like mystery procedural serialized type thing. Sherlock Holmes or whatever else. It's a character that lends itself to solving multiple mysteries, different mysteries, and following that character through that could be a lot of fun. I struggle to see it meeting up. Netflix is now involved, and as we talked about before, like the best movie on Netflix is like a B or C movie anywhere else. But also striking that same lightning with that ensemble cast as you did with this one for the first Knives Out. Again, we talked about that. That is so many times we see big names brought together that just don't pan out. And this certainly has the makings to have that happen in these sequels because, who's not going
to want to be a part of this going forward?
Right, but I just don't know that you can do this twice.
Exactly.
But it certainly lends itself to that anthology approach, that procedural approach, that serialized approach. So it's that could be fun, and as you said, it will be fun to watch Daniel Craig do it again. But who knows? They won't be as good for sure. But I don't think it'll be as. I can't say that either. It might be as far a drop as we've seen in the past. Oh my gosh. All right. So Steve, Knives Out. We love it. I hate the puking thing. It's stupid. It's not that it bothers me because it's puke. It bothers me because it's stupid. And it feels like lazy writing. But other than that, brilliantly written. Crooked House, worth the end, but it's a trudge to get to it because you're just going to want to watch. I would say watch Crooked House first. If you haven't seen Knives Out, for sure, watch Crooked House first. You'll enjoy it more, and then you'll watch Knives Out and be like, "Oh, that's how you do it, right?" Don't Breathe. So I don't know. Knives Out. I'd give Knives Out like an 8.5 out of 10.
Oh yeah, for sure, definitely must watch.
Crooked House. I'd give it a 4.5 out of 10, and 3.5 of that is the end. I would give. We talked about Don't Breathe. If you're in for some twisted stuff, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's there for you. I think the premise has a lot of potential, but it's you don't know who you're rooting for. And in a movie like that, I need a champion, right? Call me old fashioned, but buy me dinner and give me a solid protagonist. Right. And so Don't Breathe. Again, I'll go like some of the kills are okay. I'll do 4.5 on that one too. It's sub 50%. And then I'm hearing agreement there. Or would you go lower? I feel like you would go lower.
I think I would go lower.
What would you go?
maybe a 3 at the high end. I just,
I can see it.
yeah.
I just think it's yeah. All right. Yeah, we don't need to dwell on it. And Luca. We talked about that one at nauseum and at length. So you can check out the replay if you're just tuning in. But Luca, I give it. I'm going to give Luca a 6 because I think it's above average. I think the animation and I think the solid, just really beautiful character moments outweigh the really deep plot holes and question marks that the movie leaves. I think and the message of acceptance and accepting oneself and finding your own comfort in your own skin is a good one, and one that I think the younger we can tap that into Disney viewers like my daughter, all the better, right? Because it's such a tragedy when kids, especially kids, right, when they struggle with finding peace in how they identify, and it's time that we recognize that it starts that young, right? So I think having this outlet or having this message is critical. But I do think the plot holes really weigh it down. The writing is a little soft. And some of the stereotypes, as much good as it does for that identification theme, the stereotyping of the Italian people and culture feels aggressive. Now it's through the lens of an Italian filmmaker. So how angry can you get? I mean, he wrote it, but he wrote it. He knew his audience. He's like, hey, I'm gonna get real offensive. He's like, hey, it's Americans they watch. They want to see us talking like this.
I mean, to be fair, it does. I mean, if this was Family Guy, I think they'd be giving it a hard time, right? It like they do pick up on that line that they're like, hey, what's the matter with you, stupido? And that just reminds me of Family Guy. It's like, hey, shut up with the shut up. Like,
it's so true. Anyways, but there's so much good there. Certainly above average. I give it a 6 out of 10.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think at this point, unless Disney Pixar just hits grand slams, I think any of these that they deem direct to Disney Plus are going to suffer from their predecessors. I think Soul was the same way, and that's not to say that they're terrible. They do resonate with some people more. People really resonated with Soul. Really resonated with some people. Homeward really resonated with some people. You and I had discussed during Homeward that like there are Onward. Yeah, there are other movies that do the same thing or have the same message that were better, right? You like Coco. I think in terms of Luca, I really love Inside Out. Inside Out is a wonderful movie about finding yourself and your identity and in times of change and things like that. So, I think they suffer under the weight of the expectation, and you're looking for messages in these because Disney Pixar puts a lot of messages in their movies, and if the story isn't strong
and enough, they usually do it so well.
Yeah, it suffers under the expectation. So.
That's it. That's the pull quote right there. Luca, it suffers under the expectations. Tim, Pause Reviews Podcast. He did watch this movie. Let's see. Next week is a podcast episode. Thank you guys for joining us this week, but next week it's a podcast. Tim, I left it to you. I gave you 3 movies. I'm going to put you on the spot now. We can also do a vote with the 3 people who are watching us right now. True. I gave you Moneyball. I know you're a big movie guy. I keep hitting the... You
mean a baseball guy?
What did I say?
Movie guy. I mean, that's true too.
Can't it be both? You're on a movie podcast.
I mean, roll out the choices there.
Yeah. Moneyball, because you're a baseball movie guy. And it's based on a true story. We like doing that fact fiction stuff. The Matrix, because Matrix 4 is, the trailer just dropped. It's soon to release.
Yep.
It looks awful, but the original Matrix, pretty stellar, and you had never seen it.
Right. Right.
So we had that one on there, and then the third one was Inception, Chris Nolan's Inception.
Yeah.
So have you made a decision, sir, or do we need to poll the audience?
No, I think I'm sticking with with Moneyball. I like this idea.
Moneyball.
I want to do some baseball research. We're far enough removed from those teams that this philosophy and movie covers to really see, was this the wave of the future? Did teams adapt this and win? So I'm really interested. I've never read the book. I haven't seen the movie. I'm familiar with the concept. So it'll be really interesting. I mean, I know a lot of baseball stuff, so I think it'd be fun to do a fact versus fiction. We haven't done one quite some time. We've been in a horror rut, and we didn't even realize it.
And it's not even October yet, Tim.
Right?
Don't do it to me this early. So yeah, all right, Moneyball it is, guys. So Moneyball, you can watch it on Amazon Prime. I think you can also watch it on Hulu. Don't quote me on that, but it's definitely on Prime Video. So check it out, starring Brad Pitt and oh my gosh, what's his name?
Jonah Hill.
Jonah Hill, yeah.
Yep.
So check that one out in advance of next week's episode, and then join us on the podcast for our deep dive discussion on all things Moneyball, movies, baseball, and all the other things that Tim loves.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Feels good.
Feels good.
All right, man. Is that it?
Yeah.
Did we cover it all?
That's about all I got in me.
Dude, that was a lot. But we did it. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us this week for another live show. We will see you next week on the podcast. In the meantime, you know where to get us. Obviously, here on Instagram at Pause Reviews, the website, pausereviews.com, or through email even, pausereviews@gmail.com. Oh, thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, my friend. And then, man, shoot us messages. Let us know what you think about the stuff we talked about, movies that you want us to do, topics you want us to cover. We're going to go strong the rest of this season, and then we have a bunch of awesome stuff to look forward to with season 3.
Yep.
So start getting excited there, too. All right, guys. We'll see you next week. As always, I'm your boy, Frank.
This is Tim.
See you when we see you.
Peace.
Peace.